In this Blender video, I'll demonstrate how to model this soda can and also how to add a material to it. I'll be using Blender version 3.2. We'll start by deleting the cube. Now press Shift A and add a mesh circle. Name it Can. I'll press 7 on the number pad for top view and then tab into edit mode. Now add a face by pressing F. We're going to extrude some of the vertices, so select the leftmost 9 vertices. Then press E, then X, then extrude them to the left. You can look here to see how far I'm extruding. Next we'll add some edge loops, so press Ctrl R and use the scroll wheel to set 2 edge loops. Then left click and then right click. Now we're going to select the outside edges. They're in 4 segments, so Alt left click one segment, then Shift Alt left click the remaining 3 segments to add them to the selection. Now extrude and scale by pressing E, then S, then make it about this size. Now move it straight up a little by pressing G, then Z, then drag it up. I'll press 7 on the number pad for top view. Next, press Shift A and add a mesh circle. Then increase the number of vertices to 38. We're doing this to make the number of vertices match the number of vertices around this outside edge. Now press S and scale it up in size. Then move it on the X-axis by pressing G, then X, then center the circle. With the circle still selected, add the outside of the mesh to the selection by pressing Shift, Alt while left-clicking. Then from the Edge menu select Bridge Edge Loops. Now switch to Face Select mode and select the circle face. Then press X to delete and select faces. Next switch to Edge Select mode. Then press Alt and left-click the inside circle to select it. We're going to duplicate this circle and place the duplicate in the same location as the original, so press Shift D and then right-click. Then press S to scale it down in size. I'll press 7 on the number pad for top view. Now switch to Vertex Select mode. Next we're going to use proportional editing to bend this circle to make the hole in the can. So enable proportional editing and then enable connected only. Then select this vertex. Now we'll move it on the X-axis by pressing G, then X. Since we're using proportional editing, the size of the circle defines the affected area. Use the scroll wheel to change its size, then move it over here. Now Alt left click to select this new shape and press F to add a face. Then press I to inset it a little. We're going to move this down a little on the Z-axis, but first disable proportional editing. Then press G, then Z, then move it down a little. Next, Alt left click this inside circle to select it. Then extrude and scale it by pressing E, then S, then scale it down in size. With this circle still selected, add to the selection the outside of this half moon shape by pressing Shift Alt and left clicking it. Now from the Edge menu select Bridge Edge Loops. Sometimes when you do this it will look twisted like you see here. If this happens, press Ctrl Z to undo the last operation. Then Alt left click the circle to select it. We're going to move it a very small amount on the Z-axis, so press G, then Z, then 0.001, then enter. With this circle still selected, add to the selection the outside of this half moon shape again by pressing Shift Alt and left clicking it. Since these 2 loops are a little different on the Z-axis now, the Bridge Edge Loops command will work without twisting things. This looks much better. Next we'll add some edge loops, so press Ctrl R, use the scroll wheel to set 3 loops, then left click and then right click. Now from the edge loops that were just added, Alt left click the center one to select it. Then press G, then Z, then move this loop down a little. Now Alt left click the next inner loop to select it. Now press S and scale this loop up in size until this edge on the right is almost vertical. Next, Alt left click the loop on the other side of the crease. Then press S to scale and scale it down in size until this edge is almost vertical. This will create a crease. Now from the Modifiers tab, add a Subdivision Surface modifier to increase the geometry. Set the viewport and render values to 2. Then tab into Object Mode, right-click and select Shade Smooth. You'll notice that we have this strange looking ring that's due to the normals not being correct. To fix this, tab back into Edit Mode, press A to select all, and then from the Mesh menu select Normals and then recalculate outside. Now it looks good. If you disable Show Overlays, you can get a better look at how we're doing so far. Let's sharpen some edges now by adding edge loops. So re-enable Show Overlays. Now press Ctrl R and add an edge loop here and pull it almost all the way to the inside edge. Then press Ctrl R and add an edge loop to the same place and pull it almost all the way to the outside edge. Next, Alt left click the outside circle to select it. Then press 1 on the number pad for front view. We're going to pull up this outside edge to be even with the top. So press G, then Z, then pull it up. Now we'll work on the lip of the can. So extrude on the Z axis by pressing E, then Z, then pull it down here. Then press S to scale it a little. Then press E, then Z to extrude. Then S to scale. Then extrude and scale by pressing E, then S. Then E followed by Z to extrude. Next, extrude and scale by pressing E, then S. Now we'll make the body of the can. So extrude on the Z axis by pressing E, then Z. Then press S to scale. Then press E and then Z to extrude on the Z axis. Then press E and Z again. Then press S to scale. Now press F to fill this in. To get rid of these ripples, press I and inset it a little. Then press I again and inset it one more time. Now we're going to make this bottom part curve upwards. So press I to inset again, but this time inset it by a larger amount. Then move this up on the Z axis by pressing G, then Z. Then to get rid of the ripples, press I and inset it a little. Now we'll sharpen some edges. So press Ctrl R to add an edge loop and pull it down here. Then press Ctrl R to add another edge loop and pull it up here. Then Ctrl R and pull this one all the way to the top. We need to do a little work on the top rim of the can. So press Ctrl R to add a loop cut to the inside of the rim and pull it up almost to the top. Then Ctrl R and add another loop cut to the inside of the rim and pull this one all the way to the bottom. Then scale this new loop cut a specific amount by pressing S, then 1.02, then enter. Now we'll add an edge loop at the outside of the lip right at the center. So press Ctrl R, then left click, and then right click. Next we'll sharpen some more edges on the top of the can. So press Ctrl R and slide the edge loop here. Press Ctrl R and slide it here. Now I'll show you a variation that you can do with the loop cut. So press Ctrl R and add a loop cut here. You'll notice how the edge loop is close to the edge of the can on the left and right side, but not on the top or bottom. To make this more even near the edge of the can, expand the last operation panel and enable Even. Now press Ctrl R and add a loop cut here. This loop cut isn't even next to this center part. So in this case, disable Even and set the factor value to -0.9. It's not perfectly even now, but it's much better. I'll turn off overlays so that we can see the results so far. We're finished modeling the main part of the can, and so I'll save what we have so far. Now we'll make the tab that goes on the top of the can. so tab into Object Mode. Then press 7 on the number pad for top view. Now press Shift-A and add a mesh circle. It should have 32 vertices. Name this object Tab. Now press G and then Z to move it up on the Z-axis so that we can see it. Then press 7 on the number pad for top view. Now tab into Edit Mode. We want this circle to be a little smaller than this indented area, so move it on the X-axis by pressing G, then X. Now press S to scale. Then press G and then X to move it on the X-axis until the right edge of the circle is at the 3D cursor. We're going to extrude the left half of this circle, so select all of the vertices on the left half and also include the center vertices. Then extrude on the X-axis by pressing E, then X. Then press Ctrl-R to add a loop cut here. Then Ctrl-R again to add a loop cut here. Now select these vertices. We're going to reverse them on the X-axis, so press S, then X, then -1, then Enter. Next, switch to Face Select mode and select these faces. Now delete these faces by pressing X and selecting Faces. To prevent the can from affecting our view, temporarily turn its visibility off. Next, add a subdivision surface modifier and set the viewport and render values to 2. Now, switch to Edge Select mode and Alt left click the left half of the circle to select it. Then Shift Alt left click the right half of the circle to add it to the selection. Then press F to add a face. Next, we're going to inset this circle 3 times. So press I, then I again, then I again. Now switch to Face Select mode and then left-click in an empty area to deselect all. We're going to use Circle Select now to select some of the faces. So press C and use the scroll wheel to shrink the cursor size. Then select these faces and then right-click to end the selection. Now press X to delete and select Faces. Right now, if I try to rotate the view, the tab will disappear. If I zoom out, you can see it again. The reason that it disappeared is because the view is not using the tab as its center of rotation. To fix this, press A to select all, then press the period on the number pad. If you don't have a number pad, then from the View menu select Frame Selected. Now the view will rotate around the tab. Let's give it some thickness, so press E to extrude. Then select the center circle and press E to extrude. To get rid of the ripples, press I to inset, then I again. Now press Ctrl-R and add a loop cut here. Then press Ctrl-R again and add a loop cut here. Now press 7 on the number pad for top view. Next, press Ctrl-R and add a loop cut here. We're going to use Circle Select again, so switch to Face Select mode, press C, select these faces, then right-click to end the selection. Now move these faces down on the Z-axis by pressing G and then Z. We have one final loop cut to add, so press Ctrl-R, add a loop cut to the outside edge of the tab, and then left-click and then right-click. Now tab into Object Mode, right-click and select Shade Smooth. We're finished making the tab, so let's move it into position. So turn the can visibility back on. Now move it down on the Z-axis by pressing G and then Z. A good way to position it is to move it a little too far down and then back it up into position. Now let's add a material to the can. So select it and tab into Edit Mode. Then press A to select all. Switch to the Material tab and click New to add a new material. We'll first be setting the material for the silver part of the can. So set the metallic value to 1 and the roughness value to 0.3. Change the name of the material to Top of Can. Now switch to Edge Select mode if it's not already selected. Then rotate the view to the back of the can and select one of the vertical middle edges. Then hold down the Shift key and select the next two edges. Then while still holding the Shift key, select the next two edges up here. Now right-click and select Mark Seam. When we unwrap the mesh, this selection is what will be used for the left and right edges. We'll be putting an image on the unwrapped mesh. Next, press 1 on the number pad for front view and switch to Face Select mode. So that we can select faces on the front and back at the same time, press Z and select Wireframe. Now select all the faces that will receive the image, but don't select the faces on the bottom of the can that are pushed upwards. Then press Shift-Alt and left-click the bottom row of faces to add them to the selection. Next, click the plus button to add a new material and then click New. Then click the Assign button so that the selected faces will use this new material. Rename the material Image. Now click the small button on the left side of the base color and select Image Texture. Then click Open and navigate to an image file. I'm using this image named Can Art. I'll put a link to it in the video description in case you want to use the same image. When you have an image that you want to use, select it and click Open Image. Now press Z and select Material Preview. Next, we need to set things up to make our image display properly. So switch to the UV Editing workspace. In the right-hand window, press Z and select Material Preview. While still in the right-hand window, right-click and select UV Unwrap Faces, and then Unwrap. Some of the image has now appeared on the can. Now we'll scale things and center the image in the left-hand window. I'll start by zooming out so that we can see the whole image. Now press A to select the whole unwrapped mesh. Then move it on the X-axis by pressing G, then X, and then move to center it over the artwork. Next, rotate it 90 degrees by pressing R, then -90, then Enter. Now press S to scale, and scale it until all the text is contained in the center faces. I'll also press G to center it a little better. You'll notice on the can that the pattern repeats itself. To prevent this, in the Material tab, change the repeat value to Extend. The pattern no longer repeats. While we're in the Material tab, set the metallic value to 0.7 and the roughness value to 0.15. Now switch back to the Layout workspace. You'll notice here that the image doesn't extend all the way to the lip of the can. To fix this, tab into Edit mode. Then press Ctrl-R and add a loop cut to the top of the image and drag it all the way to the top. We'll also do this at the bottom, so press Ctrl-R, add a loop cut to the bottom of the image, and drag it near the bottom. Now we can tab back into object mode. Next, we'll set up the material for the tab. So select it, then in the Material tab, click the button on the left of the New button and select Top of Can. The can with the tab is finished. I'll save what I have so far. Let's finish this project by setting up an environment for the can. I'm going to use an HDR image from HDRI Haven. I'll put a link to it in the video description. Now select the World tab. Click the small button next to Color and select Environment Texture. Then click the Open button and select whatever HDR image you would like to use. Since we're using this HDR image to light the scene, hide the light object for both the viewport and rendering. Now I'll press Z and switch to rendered view so that we can see the background. I'm going to change the strength to 1.5 to make it a little brighter. I'm currently using the Eevee render engine, but I'll switch to cycles later. Now we'll set up the view that we'll use for rendering. So press 0 on the number pad for camera view. I'm going to zoom in a little. Now press N to open the sidebar and switch to the View tab. Then select Camera to View and press N again to close the sidebar. Next, zoom and pan to put the can in the position that you would like. Next, we'll rotate the can on the Z-axis, so select the can and the tab. Then press R, then Z, then rotate the can. Next, we'll add a surface for the can to sit on, so press Shift-A and add a mesh plane. You can see it up here. Now scale it by pressing S, then 50, then Enter. Then press 1 on the number pad for front view, and move it by pressing G, then Z, then move it to the bottom of the can. Now press 0 on the number pad to return to camera view. When we render our final image, we're going to use the Cycles render engine. This surface that we just added will block some of the nice reflections that the Cycles render engine will produce. So we're going to move it away from the camera. To do that, press G, then Y, then move it to the corner of the camera window. Then press G, then X, and move it to the other corner of the camera window. Now change the render engine to Cycles. This is our final rendered image. Well, that concludes this video. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe and leave a comment.